Okay, I'm coming on camera to address issues about climate change. I've got two things I want to talk about, one of which is not something that I've heard discussed anywhere else. I want to talk about more information that could be collected that we can actually get that would be significantly useful. I would like to see databasing take place in regards to currently available zero emissions technologies, and that is not something that I can do on my own. So I'm going to give out the idea that I was going to use to pay my way through college in hopes that this will reach somebody who will help with the issue, because I do feel that we're short on time and it needs to be addressed. I have a short topic on carbon taxation. I went ahead and made a statement last night online, and I just feel that I need to elaborate on what I said in a more effective manner, and hopefully publishing a video will aid in reaching more people. I do not have a scripted speech. I am just sitting here in front of the camera to talk. I'm a student pursuing a Bachelor of the Sciences in Landscape Architecture. I'm worried that climate change is going to affect my career field and possibly make my degree void and null if there is the possibility for climate change to affect the phenological cycles of the plants and issues of things not being able to grow where they're supposed to grow. So I contacted the IPCC a few months ago, probably about 6 months ago, and the letter was a request to collect data on available zero emissions technologies. I do feel it is needed information. I do feel that with this information we would be able to be better at calculating our ability to mitigate climate change. The response that I received was we cannot do that. The reason is because of political issues that would get involved in attempting to collect such data. So ultimately, I would like to see this done globally. I do feel that the people who are working on the problems, doing the right thing, and putting the technology out there need to be acknowledged. Their creations need to be acknowledged. And I feel that it is simply not. When I look to the media, I see a lot of political discussion. There are a lot of hot topics going on right now. Unfortunately, we are living in a time where there is a lot of grievances that have not been addressed. And with our ability with technology to communicate across a broad spectrum, there are a lot of things that people are trying to deal with that are also urgent matters that may not be helping the conversation that we need to have in regards to climate change. I do feel that it's justified. As far as the media goes, I feel that there are way too much of the negatives going on in general and not enough praise for people who are doing the right things. And some of it is just that if somebody's shooting people in your neighborhood, you need to know about it. But as a community of people who are trying to work on this problem, I don't feel that we are doing very well in making the information available. So I feel that there is a dire need at this point in time for research and analytics to be done on available zero emissions technologies. Alternatives may be nice. Personally, I would prefer to see information on available technologies, but it could be useful to launch a team in general that seeks to find the answers in regards to what we can do to mitigate and to adapt. So, if we need to look at emissions reductions technology, it may be useful. But I do feel that it is time to call out and call for a panel of researchers and analysts to get together and create a database which will provide information to the general public as well as anyone in business on what is already available to them to reduce or eliminate their carbon footprint. Because I do not feel that that information is made available or made comprehensible. I would rather see this done by an organization than by a business outfit who seeks to gain profit from such an endeavor, because that information could be manipulated through admittance in trying to aid certain companies. The information needs to be made available. I do not have the time or the mental capacities to put together something like that with where I stand by myself, and I am not interested in going through the struggle of putting up a GoFundMe page and trying to push this on my own. But it needs to be done. And when it comes to business, I feel that the backlash that I'm seeing with people not putting in the effort to do what they need to do to become a sustainable company, I feel the reason why what I'm seeing in trying to network with my industry and push on this issue is that there are not enough people in business communicating in a way to resolve such an issue. When I go on LinkedIn, there are only so many people on LinkedIn and several people who are running businesses that do not use the social media platforms. Their professionalism can be questioned. I feel that it should. But we need to see massive industrial change. We need to see it soon. We need to see it now. And the only way to do that is to have simultaneous activity. And that is not going to happen if we don't have the information that we need to make those changes in industry. Solar panels and wind technology, as well as the cars, are pretty much all I've been hearing about. Meanwhile, I went to an expo. I saw fully electric, high power, weed whackers, lawn mowers, all the things that my industry should be using and are not. And part of it is that the information is not available. So if there is a one go-to, get what you need for industry, for individuals, on what is available, these people who are doing the right thing will be able to succeed. And the people who are looking for answers will find answers. And I'm sure that we will see change a lot faster. We would have to pass legislation in order to obtain that information for the IPCC. If we're talking about the international scale Collecting that information through governance will not be easy. So we need to organize and get that done outside of the governmental systems that we have. Because that's going to require reporting from a bunch of businesses, and I'm certain that anybody who is working on reductions technologies would gladly volunteer any information on the energy output, any pollutants or toxins. I want to see the full data sheet on what they are making, how thoroughly it's been tested. Is the project complete? Is it incomplete? What is it? How does it work? Is there any pollutants that might be involved in the process of what they are creating? I don't know. But we can find answers to certain things later on. If we can deal with this problem, we can deal with other problems. The database needs to be created. There's not enough information. There's a bunch of websites all over the place. I'm also finding that things are not made comprehensible and put in plain English. So if we can do this per industry and break everything down, we can start here with the United States, we can reach out to other countries, but I want to see this done. So my statement was, all of the technology we need to mitigate climate change is already available. It is simply undocumented, underpraised, and ignored. There is no reason to further the harm that comes from fossil fuels but ignorance. If you support me, feel free to send a message. I want to know that somebody's working on this. If somebody wants to collaborate with me to work on this, fine, I can take on the workload, but this needs to be done. It needs to be done. It doesn't matter who does it, it needs to be done. Another statement that I made recently, I am advocating for carbon tax at this time. Unfortunately, I do feel that getting involved in that issue with the times that we're seeing people are learning political power, it may or may not be a go. If we're going to go for it, I say we shoot low and just start it at a really minimal cost. But I do feel that the climate change deniers are people who are vested in the fossil fuel industry. We're talking about coal workers, oil rig workers, family members of those workers, and people who have stock or take part in these companies, owners, operators, and possibly some politicians who may, if there are some corruption scandals going on, possibly have vested interests. Aside from that, I do not believe any reasonable parties who are not vested in the issue on profit, those who are not seeking to gain money from this, the people who are making money off of this, those are the combatants. That should be expected. I do not believe that it is anybody else. I do not believe that anybody else in their right mind would be arguing on such an issue with the level of immature, uneducated responses that we have been receiving. And the way that I feel about that is that it is absolutely unacceptable, it is ludicrous, and the consequences far outnumber the time it would take any reason for us to have this debate. This debate should no longer be had. This is ridiculous. That is my opinion. As far as carbon tax goes, I looked it up online. I saw some really ridiculous debating going on. Now, what should be done with the money? What are the issues surrounding the money? How does it affect the economy? I do support carbon tax. I support carbon tax because there are a lot of people in my industry who start as Joe Schmo and feel that they can buy a lawnmower and suddenly they're in the game. And guess what? Regardless of whether or not their operation is ethical, regardless of whether or not they're meeting government standards, if they're breaking the law or not. These people exist. And for my industry, the landscape industry, there are a good handful of them. There is a significant number. So how do we reach the people who are not professional enough to have a presence online, to be looking at the socioeconomic issues in running their business? How do we deal with the people who have vested interest in fossil fuels and refuse to leave their jobs even though they're in an industry which is going to tank legitimately? How do we reach the uneducated public? And the only way that I see as reasonable to deal with this without violent action, without actions that's going to cause an uproar, because another way we can deal with this is people going and shutting off those pipelines. If you're already educated on the issues, and there is a spiral of problems associated with the drilling of oil, with fracking, and it affects a lot of people. So, eliminating the practice, if we are able to do so, if we have a database, we will certainly know, would be of great benefit to the entirety of the country, except for those with vested interest. And I personally am tired of arguing with them, especially when I'm not hearing any intelligent arguments. So, carbon tax. What do we do with the money? Here's my statement. I'm going to read it verbatim. We need to officially pass on carbon tax. It's time. It needs to be done because nobody is databasing zero emissions technologies, and the issue is being swept under the rug and ignored at large. Economically, the only thing that should be done with the money which comes from the tax is subsidies for zero emissions technology and nothing else. This is because as time goes on, fossil fuels would get phased out and would phase out more quickly and effectively if we offset the money going into carbon into the proper technologies. It would help businesses get out of jail on the issue, as well as individual consumers. Using it for anything else could cause a reliance on the tax and therefore the further concealment and negligence towards zero emissions alternatives. It is the most efficient, most optimistic solution, and I feel that people who are capable about doing something on this problem have had their chance to step up to the plate and simply are not. Therefore, I also see it as the last glint of hope for mitigation. Other than that, it comes down to starvation and death. We are running out of time. Nothing else should be done with money, with that money. It needs to go from one place directly to the other, so that the businesses are less likely to backlash over their expense. So if somebody's paying their carbon tax, help them flip over. I say that they get vouchers in order to purchase zero emission technologies as replacements. And if the technologies are questionable of what we have available at this time, how long it's going to last, is it going to live up to standards, then let them choose what technology they're going to use. Don't tell them that they need to go to this company or that company. Just subsidize. And slowly and gradually just increase the taxes. I'm not talking about that weird stuff that happened out there with the people trading on their tax papers, stuff, weird crap. Just tax it. Charge taxes. Then take the tax money and use it for subsidies. Transparently. We're not seeing enough responsibility. People are not going to take responsibility unless they are made to change. So I feel that the time for people to step up to the plate and take responsibility has passed, and we have already been shown what is going to happen. People with vested interests are going to come out of the woodwork and try to get us to engage in an intellectual debate in which they interrupt and will not allow us to speak and do not acknowledge valid points. Because of the fact that they refuse to acknowledge valid points and take the issue seriously, I feel that it's time to just ignore them and do what needs to be done. Get these laws passed through Senate or wherever, Congress, however we need to do that. Get it done. Write the legislation. Somebody, anybody, needs to write that legislation and start debating how to set that up where the money goes directly into subsidies and comes directly from the carbon. To include methane from the cattle industry, if we can, please. So we need a database above all and everything, regardless of political policy. That information of what is available needs to be researched, analyzed, and broken down and made available to the general public. If it is not realistic to believe that we could mitigate or adapt and that there will be dire consequences. Because of the fact that this is all that needs to be done, really, there is no reason for it not to. So again, if somebody wants to go do that and get a team together and get started and roll with it and get it done, please do it. If I have to be involved in leadership on this issue, feel free to contact me. I just want to see it done. So there's my statement. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening. Please help with this issue. I do feel it's important. I do not feel it has been addressed. And I feel it needs to be addressed, and now it's time. So please help and thank you.